Greetings, Poké fans! Michael here, and Pokemon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl have just come out. And if you want to see my first ever playthrough of the games, that'll be over on my other channel, MandJTV Plays. But as for you all, a lot of you are probably trying to figure out what your team will be for your first playthrough of Sinnoh in quite some time. But a lot has changed since the first Sinnoh games came out 15 years ago. Specifically, how good certain Pokemon are. Today I'm going to be covering Pokemon from the Platinum Sinnoh decks that have been substantially buffed between the original Sinnoh games and now. This way, if you encounter one, you don't accidentally skip over it because you assume it's underwhelming like in the past, when in reality it's actually pretty solid within the modern battle mechanics. An important disclaimer I need to make up front though is that this video was made before the games come out, because that's how this works. I couldn't make this whole video in less than 24 hours. So there may end up being some slight inaccuracies, but I feel pretty confident things will be mostly correct though, since this is a within a generation game, so I don't think the mechanics will have changed dramatically from Sword and Shield, or Gen 7 for certain Pokemon that are not in Sword and Shield. The first buffed Pokemon I'd like to discuss is actually a group of Pokemon. Poison-type Pokemon. Back in Gen 4, and in fact all generations prior to Gen 6 except Gen 1, Poison was only super effective against Grass. This made it a mostly useless offensive type, since Grass had plenty of other weaknesses, specifically Fire, Flying, Bug, and Ice, all of which are useful against Grass and other types. Having a Poison type on your team usually meant that you were mainly using its other type, not so much its Poison type, at least on the offensive side of things. For me personally, prior to Gen 6, when I would use Crobat, I was doing so for its Flying typing, not its Poison typing. But then Gen 6 introduced the Fairy type, a type that is nowadays one of, if not the, best type in the game. And its only weaknesses are Steel and Poison. Since there are several Pokemon within the Platinum Sinnoh decks that became Fairy type when the type was added, that means that there will be Fairy types in Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, which means you have to have a way to deal with them. Therefore, the value of a Poison type Pokemon on your team is dramatically increased from back in Gen 4. Roserade, Crobat, Gengar, Skuntank, Drapion, Tentacruel, Toxicroak, and heck, even Dustox are substantially more useful now than they were back in the original games, since they can be your main way of dealing with one of the best types in the game. A lot of these Pokemon were already good even before this change, and they're even better now. You're probably wondering why I'm only talking about Poison types and not Steel types. Well, that's because there's a distinct difference between them. Poison types since Gen 4 have only been buffed. But as for Steel types, they did get buffed in Gen 6 in regard to the Fairy type matchup, but before that it was nerfed in Gen 5. When it lost its resistance to Dark and Ghost. I think it's a net positive for most Steel types, but it's a smaller gain than the Poison types got. Notice how I said most Steel types though. There are definitely some Steel types that are in a strictly worse spot now than they were in Gen 4. The main example is Bronzong because of its Psychic typing. In Gen 4, a Bronzong with Levitate had 8 resistances, 2 immunities, and 1 weakness. In Gen 8, that same Bronzong has 9 resistances, 2 immunities, and 3 weaknesses. Gaining a resistance is certainly not worth gaining 2 weaknesses, at least in my opinion. Haha, it is I, Grunty Boy. What is it now? I'm here to gush to you about the sponsor of this video, Raid Shadow Legends. You do this a lot. Well, yeah, I love it, and I identify with it. The game is full of amazing champions from various factions, which is just like how I'm a champion from the Team Rocket faction. I'm not sure beating one Pokemon game classifies you as a champion. Oh, but did you know there's a dwarf faction? Dwarves, dude! Over the centuries, they kept to themselves until the evil Cyroth's demonic forces invaded. The dwarves won and have gathered an army to fight on the side of the light against the dark. The dwarf champions are all so cool, though. I really like Samar Gemcurst and Tormund the Cold. They have beards almost as fabulous as my own. I must say, yours is exquisite. I know. Yours is okay. I love Raid as a whole though. Collecting new champions and powering them up is so much fun, and I love getting to use them to go kick butt in the campaign, especially against the big bosses. I also appreciate how often they add new stuff to the game, like the big update this month, the Guardian Ring. There's all kinds of events going on right now, and it's a great time to hop in before December when heads will roll. Literally, it looks quite violent. And let me guess, you can download the game using the... I was gonna do it. Come on. You can download the game using the link in the description below or by scanning the QR code on screen. New players will get an epic hero Chinoru who's amazing in the Doom Tower, 200,000 silver, 1 XP boost, 1 energy refill, and 1 ancient shard so you can summon an awesome champion as soon as you get in game. You can find rewards here for 30 days. Nice. Is that it? Yeah, that covers it. Thanks for letting me get all that out. Sometimes the urge to gush about the game gets so strong that I just have to teleport here. Wait, you get in by teleporting? No. Shut up. Ta-ta! On the topic of fairy types, that's another group of buffed Pokemon. All the Pokemon that became fairy type when the fairy type was introduced. Within the Platinum Sinnoh dex, the fully evolved ones are Mr. Mime, Clefable, Azumarill, Gardevoir, and Togekiss. Mega Altaria could be there as well if there's Mega Evolution in the game, but to be honest, I don't expect that, and if it is added, I'd be stunned if it's before post-game. There's also the Galarian form of Rapidash, but I don't anticipate being able to bring in Pokemon from other games until post-game, and not until a couple months after release once home compatibility is implemented. As I mentioned earlier, the Fairy type is an excellent type, having only 2 weaknesses and completely walling Dragon types. With how big of a threat Cynthia's Garchomp is, the amount of Dark types used by Team Galactic, and the Fighting type Gym, having a Fairy type on your team would be very helpful. All the Pokemon that gained the Fairy type benefited from it, but I think the biggest benefit goes to Togekiss. Togekiss was already great due to its large 545 base stat total, but once it gained the Fairy type, it became so much more offensively potent and the perfect counter to Cynthia's Garchomp due to being immune to Ground and Dragon. If you want your team to be as powerful as possible, I highly recommend using a Togekiss. Another Pokemon that experienced significant buffs due to type changes is Rotom. But not just due to type changes, form changes. Nowadays, Rotom's appliance forms are commonplace, but in Diamond and Pearl, they didn't exist at all, and in Platinum, you could only change his forms if you had a secret key, an event-only item. This will surely not be the case in the new games though, since we've been able to change Rotom's form without an event in every game since Gen 5. Additionally, in Diamond and Pearl, Rotom could not be obtained until after getting the National Dex, but in Platinum you could get one immediately. I'm quite confident this change will carry over to the new games, which means for the first time ever, you could use an appliance form Rotom on a Sinnoh playthrough team. And the appliance form matters a lot because they are way stronger than regular Rotom. The base stat total is much higher. However, all that I've discussed so far are changes to Rotom's accessibility, not its actual properties. There have been some changes to its properties, the types of its appliance forms. While the normal form was Electric Ghost and still is, its appliance forms used to all be Electric Ghost as well. But then in Gen 5, they were changed to Electric and whichever type matched that appliance's special move. This was a huge buff for Rotom because not only do these appliance forms now get the stab boost for their special moves, but they also have better defensive typing in a lot of cases. The best example is Rotom Wash. Thanks to Levitate, its only weakness is Grass. Additionally, thanks to the upgrades to the Pokédex, your main water-type Pokemon doesn't have to know Surf anymore. So, I think, assuming what I am assuming, you could use Rotom Wash as a playthrough Pokemon for the very first time. I know a lot of people hate Rotom Wash, but I think that's pretty fun. Type changes are not the only way Pokemon have been buffed since Gen 4 though. A big category is Pokemon that got better thanks to getting a new ability. And most of those new abilities between Gen 4 and now are hidden abilities. Hidden abilities were introduced in Gen 5, which means no Pokemon had them in Gen 4. As of writing this video, I do not know how to get hidden ability Pokemon in Brilliant Diamond Shining Pearl. But if it ends up being a method available before the league, then here are some Pokemon you should consider going out of your way to get with their hidden abilities, because their hidden abilities make them quite a bit better. Alakazam gained Magic Guard, which prevents damage from anything but direct hits, such as entry hazards or weather or status conditions. This is a fantastic ability, and I believe it is better than its other abilities, Synchronize and Inner Focus. Gyarados gained Moxie, which boosts its attack every time it KOs an opponent. Intimidate is a great ability, but when I can choose between the two, which is an oddly frequent choice to make, like how many Pokemon have both Intimidate and Moxie? Like Crocodile, Scrafty, Salamence, I'm sure there's others. I tend to go for Moxie because sweeping with it is a lot of fun. Steelix gained Sheer Force, an ability that removes the extra effects of moves in exchange for boosting their power by 30%. While Rockhead and Sturdy are solid abilities, pun somewhat intended, Steelix being able to boost the power of its Iron Tail, Iron Head, Rock Slide, Crunch, or Bulldoze is significant. I think the moves most greatly impacted by this are Rock Slide and Iron Head, since their secondary effects are potentially flinching the opponent, an effect that only works if the user goes first. And Steelix is rarely gonna go first, it is so slow. So you might as well remove that effect and give it some extra power. Rampardos also gained Sheer Force, which is helpful for the same reasons. I don't know how you'd get a hidden ability fossil Pokemon, and I feel like it's probably not gonna be possible in these games, but you never know. Heracross gained Moxie. As I've already discussed, I quite like that ability, and I think it works well on Heracross. Honchkrow also gained Moxie. Wow, I did not know so many Pokemon got Moxie as their hidden ability. I'm not complaining, it's a great ability, big fan. Horugly got Defiant, an ability that boosts the Pokemon's attack by 2 stages whenever any of its stats are lowered by another Pokemon. Horugly is not a great Pokemon, but Defiant is a great ability and substantially increases how useful it would be for you. Seeking gained Lightning Rod, which draws in electric moves and instead of doing damage, boosts the Pokemon's special attack by 1 stage. Seeking isn't great, and it's a physical attacker instead of a special attacker, but if you want to try to use one, turning one of its weaknesses into an immunity is a massive help. Raichu also gained Lightning Rod. While it's not as dramatic of an impact as it is for Seeking, it's certainly nice to gain an immunity. Garchomp gained Rough Skin, which damages the attacker each time they make contact with the Pokemon with Rough Skin. I think this is a much more helpful ability than Sand Veil, since unless you're running a Sandstorm-focused team, you likely won't see a Sandstorm set up very often. Azumarill gained Sap Sipper, which makes it immune to grass moves and boosts its attack when it's hit by one. This is great for Azumarill, since it converts a weakness into an immunity. But its regular ability Huge Power is also quite good. Gliscor gained Poison Heal, which is pretty much explained by the name. Pair it with a Toxic Orb, and this gives it a great way to get reliable recovery and prevent it from being hit with other status conditions. Espeon got Magic Bounce, which reflects status moves back onto the attacker. It's a fantastic ability and much better than its normal ability, Synchronize. With Synchronize, the opponent uses Will-O-Wisp, Espeon gets burned, the opponent gets burned too. But like with Magic Bounce, the opponent uses Will-O-Wisp, it bounces off of Espeon, and then the opponent gets burned, and Espeon is not burned. It's like Magic Bounce is just simply better. Tangrowth got Regenerator, allowing you to easily heal it some just by switching out. I like this more than Chlorophyll and Leaf Guard, since it doesn't require harsh sunlight to be useful. And finally, Mamoswine got Thick Fat, which halves damage from fire and ice moves. This is super useful for Mamoswine, since this ability makes it lose a weakness and gain a resistance. But in addition to these new hidden abilities, there are a couple Pokemon that got new, not hidden abilities over the course of the generations that make them quite a bit better. Moving from Gen 6 to 7, Pelipper got Drizzle as a regular ability. This gives you easy access to an automatic rain setter if you want to use rain on your team, and it makes Pelipper a lot more useful. Moving from Gen 5 to Gen 6, Milotic gained Competitive, which is basically the special equivalent of Defiant. If an enemy Pokemon lowers any of its stats, its special attack is boosted by 2 stages. It's a fantastic ability and a big buff for Milotic. And while it's technically not gaining a new ability, Gastrodon's and Luminion's ability Storm Drain has been buffed itself since Gen 4. Originally it only drew in water type moves, but now it draws them in, makes the target Pokemon immune to the move, and boosts the Pokemon's special attack by 1 stage. Gastrodon in particular gets quite the buff from this better Storm Drain. It's the ability of choice for competitive Gastrodon. And finally, while it's not a specific Pokemon, all Pokemon across the board should have better movesets than they did in Gen 4. So many new moves have been added in Gen 5, 6, 7, and 8 that a lot of Pokemon are just gonna learn better moves than they did. Thanks so much for watching, with an extra special thanks to my patrons over on Patreon who are helping support my channel independent of fluctuating YouTube ad rates. If you wanna help support me in the same way, the link is in the description below. Also, if you want to check out some more of my fun Pokemon content, I recommend these videos here. All right, that's all I have for now. So until next time, big fans, gotta catch them all.